Welcome to MTV Somali Channels nightly news bulletin. If you're new to us, please don't forget to subscribe in order not to miss out on our nightly news round in Somalia. In today's headline, maritime case not part of resumption of relations with Somalia and Kenya, says Deputy Prime Minister. Somali military leave Mogadishu following FGS opposition demilitarization deal. And UAE to inject $1 billion in Ethiopia Berbera infrastructure. We start with, Somalia has maintained the maritime case with Kenya will be determined by the International Court of Justice, ICJ, allaying reports that the two countries had resolved to an out-of-court settlement. Deputy Prime Minister Mahdi Gould, who has been Somalia's chief agent at the ICJ, said Saturday there was no correlation between the case and the resumption of diplomatic ties with Kenya. The maritime dispute will be finalized by the International Court of Justice following oral hearing completed in March 15 to 18 this year. Deputy PM Gould said. We are waiting for fair judgment, and diplomatic relations between the two countries is a separate issue. There have been media reports that the Qatari Special Envoy for Counter-Terrorism and Mediation of Conflict Resolution, Mutlaq al-Qahtani, had successfully convinced Somalia to drop the case against Kenya during his mediation on the diplomatic fallout between the two countries. The ICJ concluded the case in March and is expected to issue its verdict in coming months. Kenya withdrew from the oral hearings citing bias and inadequate preparations, but the court did not entertain its prayers for further delay. Somalia announced Thursday it was resuming diplomatic relations with Kenya, and it had since emerged the Qatari regime mediated the negotiations. The last group of military forces and opposition militias left Mogadishu Friday following a crucial deal between Prime Minister Mohamed Roble and opposition groups this past week. Heavily armed soldiers and militias were seen leaving various stations Friday where they had been based since April, when the government and opposition sides inched close to full-scale fighting. Some of the government soldiers were drawn from the Hiran region in central Somalia. We are sending our forces back to the frontline position to defend the country and its people, Federal MP Mahad Salad told journalists. Opposition forces mainly based in northern Mogadishu districts of Karan and Abdiaziz and parts of Hodan district have also left their bases. Prime Minister Mohamed Roble led the demilitarization process on Thursday and urged roadblocks mounted by both sides to be removed. The move followed a deal between Prime Minister Roble and the 15-member Council of Presidential Candidates (CPC) Wednesday. According to a communiqué from the meeting, all forces were to vacate the city in 48 hours. The two sides also agreed that deserting soldiers will not be punished upon return to their bases. Opposition soldiers were drawn from the Middle Shabelle region. The withdrawal of the forces comes ahead of electoral talks scheduled for May 20. The African Union announced Friday the appointment of a High Representative to Somalia, former Ghanaian President John Mahama. Mahama will be engaging with the federal government and the federal member states, and other stakeholders, including the opposition, to resolve the long-running electoral stalemate. The UAE, through its ports operator DP World, will spend $1 billion in developing supply chain infrastructure along the Berbera corridor on the Ethiopian side to link with the port of Berbera in Somaliland. DP World signed an MOU with Ethiopia's Ministry of Transport Thursday that will see the Emirati-owned company develop dry ports, silos, warehouses, container yards, cool and cold chain depots, freight forwarding and clearing activities. It is intended that for export, DP World will offer services from origin in Ethiopia up to Berbera port, while for imports, it will offer from the port of loading to the delivery of shipments in one of the dry ports in the hinterlands or the final destination of the consignees, a joint statement read in part. The new deal happened 2 days after UK Ambassador to Somalia Kate Foster flagged off the construction of the 22.5-kilometre Hargeisa bypass, which is part of the 240 km Berbera corridor on the Somaliland side. The project is jointly funded by the Abu Dhabi Fund for Development and the UK's Department for International Development. The road, which starts at the port of Berbera, terminates at Wajale town on the Ethiopian border. It was not, however, clear if the MOU covers the construction of the 696 km road from Wajale to Addis Ababa, which is part of the Grand Berbera Corridor. As a leading global provider of trade and logistics solutions, We strongly believe that developing the Berbera corridor into one of the major trade and logistics corridors will unlock huge economic benefits for Ethiopia, and support its ambitious development plans, DP World Group Chairman Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem said during the signing of the MoU in Addis Ababa on April 6. DP World is currently running a $442 million Berbera port upgrade which it secured in 2017 from the Somaliland government through a 30-year concession. The new MoU bolsters UAE influence in the Horn of Africa region as it edges out its key competitor Qatar. Another UAE government-owned P&O Ports secured a 30-year concession to upgrade and run the port of Bosaso in Puntland at the cost of $336 million in 2017. Qatar, which has been at loggerheads with UAE courtesy of the Gulf crisis, is currently constructing the Mogadishu Lower and Middle Shabelle Regions Highway at the cost of $200 million. That's it for our nightly news roundup. Don't forget to subscribe in order to not miss more bulletins from MTV Somali Channel.